So the last few videos that I made were a little bit silly. I was just having a silly goose time, and they were also more advanced, except if you were gonna be a part of my Patreon, and you are always welcome to support me there, right? So what I wanted to do here is make this a beginner tutorial, and we're just gonna make a very simple object. It's also gonna be, well, you already saw it in the thumbnail, right? It's gonna be the X from Animal Crossing. So I already played Animal Crossing a lot, and that is kind of why. And I think this is a nice model to start with, especially if you are a beginner. So we want to look at this X. You can get this image in the link down below. That's on my website. It's totally free. Or you can just go to Google and search for the X. That's also totally fine. So the first thing that you want to do here is you want to click on 1 on your numpad. Why? Well, this is our front view, right? Let me show you what happens if I don't do that and I just drag in my image. You will see that my image gets, dragged in, but then it's like all crooked, right? If I actually go to the front view, so 1, and then drag it in, it might be not totally in the middle, but what is nice here is that it is nice and flat against our y-axis. So we want to move this, right? And let's just delete the default cube for right now, just so we can focus on this image. And what we want to do is, I want to rotate this a little bit, so it's like this part here is nice and straight. And I will just use the z-axis as a way to straighten it. So this seems to be good. Now you can just move it a little bit here, and that is for later. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna create some geometry. And let's just start with this part here, which is the wooden stick. We're just gonna click on Shift A, and you can see down here what I am typing, so Shift A, and I'm gonna add a cylinder. And we have some options. If you go here to add cylinder, we have the vertices, radius, and depth, all that stuff. So you can change these. The most important one right now will be the vertices, and what you want to do is you want to lower it. So I'm gonna do 12. Especially for games, you want to keep this a little bit lower. If you want to go very photorealistic, you could always higher this. But that can also be done with some of the modifiers that we have. Now we have a radius, which of course needs to be changed, but we're gonna do this later on in the edit mode. We have a depth. We're also gonna do that in the edit mode. And we have a cap fill type. So, cap fill type is now n-gon. And let me show you what an n-gon is. An n-gon is this. So this is the cap, right? We have a bottom and a top. And this cap is essentially all of these vertices here are filled together, and it creates one face, right? But this face has more than 4 vertices connected to it. This makes it an n-gon, and n-gons is not really what we want. In games, we want trees or quads. So you can just select your face, click on X, and delete the face. You can also do this in the bottom. And now the top and the bottom are open. If we go to our front view, we want to scale this a bit down. So select everything and just click on S to scale it down, and we can move it into its place. So you just want to make the size around the same as this wooden part. Then you select this whole edge loop, move it up around here. And this bottom, we're just gonna extrude an extra piece. So we are not gonna move it only, but we are gonna extrude. So E. Here. Rotate this a little bit. And here we have kind of the main shape, right? If you want to add more of these edge loops in here, you just click on Ctrl R. And you can see this yellow thing ending up here. If you one time select, you can still move it around. If you now right click, it will snap just to the middle. If you left click, it will snap wherever you are pointing it at. So let's say I'm doing right click now. You can see it snaps back to the middle. If I do left click from wherever it is, now it will end up there. So you want to do this. Move this into place. This one seems to be okay still. Maybe I want to scale it a little bit up. That would be the only thing that I would change. So what are we gonna do? Well, we're just gonna fill it up again. This time we do not want an n-gon. So if I select this whole edge loop with Alt and then select, we can see that we have selected all these edges. Click on E to extrude. Then I'm gonna right click. This snaps it back into place, but it is still there, okay? Now if you click on Alt M, you can merge, and I'm gonna merge at center, right? So this is, so essentially what you're doing, we're also gonna do it in the bottom. You're selecting all the vertices that you want to duplicate first. So you're gonna extrude them. Then you're gonna right click, they're still there, Alt M and add center. That is one of the techniques that I use a lot, especially to fill these n-gons. It's already quite cool, but it's still very, very blocky, right? If you click on W and do shade smooth, we can see that it now is nice and smooth. So if you want less of these corners in here, what you can see a little bit of a sharp edge, which doesn't really happen in our wood here. You can just add another edge loop, and just the more edge loops essentially that you create, you want to put them a little bit further away from each other. But the more that you create, the smoother it gets, right? Just the top and the bottom seem very, very flat, right? And I would like to create a bevel. So if you go in here, select this whole edge loop, click on Ctrl B for bevel, you can see that we can bevel this, right? And if yours doesn't really work as great as this one does, then what you want to do is you want to go into object mode, click on Ctrl A and apply the scale. Sometimes when you scale an object up or down, the scale changes, and this also changes the way that modifiers and some of your editing tools work. So yeah, now it should work great, and you just want to create a little bevel in here as well as here, bevel, and this creates a nice bevel in our wood. Very, very nice. So if you look here on the top right, you can see that we have a scene collection. We want to rename our cylinder to just wood or whatever, as long as you can remember it. So what about our X here? We are going to just create a plane. And this plane, we need to rotate this around the X-axis for 90 degrees. And if you go into the front view, we can see that we barely actually can see our X behind here, right? But if you go into here, you can change your viewport shading to wireframe. And now you can look through your model. So the only thing I want to do now is I want to scale this a little bit down. I'm gonna move these two here to the right, and this I'm gonna move to where the X start to kind of separate, let's say. Now I'm gonna extrude again, and I'm just gonna scale this up until we reach these like sharp edges. And the only thing that we can see now right now is that we do not really have this geometry here. So if you just create an extra edge loop, Ctrl R, and move this vertex around the X-axis here, we can see that we're already starting to get this shape. So as I said before, you just can create more edge loops to create a more of a smooth shape, right? So let's just create a few more here, and here we have a quite decent shape. I do not really feel like also doing this in the bottom, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna select all of these and just delete them. Why would I do that? Well, we have a lot of modifiers. If we're going to add modifier, go to mirror and mirror this around the Z-axis, we can see that, yeah, nothing really happens. Why is this? Well, this also has to do with the part that I said before with the wood. Sometimes when you scale up, rotate, or change the location of an object, we have to apply them. So for this one, I have to apply the rotation. Ctrl A, apply rotation. And here you can see that we, achieve what we wanted to achieve. Very, very cool. So the bottom and the top are now the same. I'm going back to my wireframe mode, and I want to also create an edge loop in here. And with this edge loop, I want to move these vertices more towards this grayish line, okay? So something around here. And here in the bottom, you can see that if I move this vertex around, that the other one, which is mirrored, kinda goes through each other, like, and we don't want that. So if you look at your modifier, your mirror modifier, you want to go to the options and turn on clipping. So now, if you go through like the origin, like through the midpoint, you will see that I cannot move them in or outside of each other. They are merged together, let's say. So that is one little trick. I'm just going to create one extra edge loop and just make this a little bit more smooth. So our side view is done, but we want some thickness in here. We can literally do this with the mirror modifier, but we of course need to go into edit mode and move this a little bit to the right. So around the y-axis, I'm just moving it a bit. Now turn on the y-axis and we can see that we have some thickness, right? They are just not merged together, but we have a certain amount of thickness. We want it to be thicker than our wood. So I'm gonna turn on my wood again. If you like click on these eyes, you can see that you can turn them on or off. And now I want to go into edit mode again and move this around so the wood fits in here. Awesome. So if we look at our model here, we can see that it has a certain amount of thickness, and then around here they start to merge together. So if we do the same here, G, Y, and then just move them together, we can see that we get a nice and kind of a sharp edge, right? So we want to do this with all of these. Something like this. So this is a little bit of fiddling around, but it just gotta look right for you. Now, in the back, we want to extrude it and merge it together, as well as these here. Okay. Now we can fill this one up. So if you select this edge, you can just click on F, and you can also do that with these vertices. F. Cool. So just play a little bit around with your model. So our model seems quite simple and a little bit ugly still, right? So how can we change this? It is not too hard. We can essentially throw a bevel modifier in here to create some extra bevels on these sides. We only want them on the sides though. We do not really want to create bevels like all the way around. So what we want to do is I want to change my limit method of my bevel modifier to weight. And now it is like before, like nothing happened. That is because we need to create our weighted edges. So you just select the edges that you want to have bevels on. So here, all the way around here, here, and also at this. Go to your item and go to edges data, and we want a mean bevel weight, which is on 1. So now you can see that the bevel gets created all around these points. Now in the bevel modifier, you can essentially change the offset a little bit so it's not like that sharp. And then you can also change the segment, so you can put more segments or less segments in here. So you can literally see what we just did. We created this bevel. So now we can also create a nice subdivision surface to make everything a little bit more high resolution. And even though if we have the viewport already to 2, we want to create a smooth shading so those little blocky details go away. So this is our X for right now. We could also create a subdivision surface for our wood. But you can see sometimes if you use a subdivision surface that some parts of your model do get like smaller because you smooth everything out. So you want to create an extra edge loop in here to negate that. I have to be honest, if you want to put this into a game engine, you also have to make a low poly and then bake everything together. We are not going to do that right now because I just wanted to focus on just a small little beginner tutorial. I have way more tutorials coming up on that, and I also have courses on that and all that stuff. That's all, you can all find it on my website. And if you have any questions, just ask. But I just wanted to make that clear. Let's just jump on to the next point, which will be coloring these, right? So we have a very nice X right here. The model looks cool, it looks clean. We just need to be able to color this. There are multiple methods, and I'm going to show you 2 of them. We're just going to change our layout to shading. So now we're just really going to shade our model. And if you select a certain part, so let's select our X here, like the X head, then click on new, and we have a new material here. You can rename this material, let's do something like metal. And here you can see a lot of options, okay? I'm not going over all of them, but essentially you have your base color, which is literally just the color that you have. Then you have metallic. Is it a metal? Is it a non-metallic? In this case it is a metal, right? So we're gonna keep that up. Then we have a specular, which we're not gonna talk about, also not the specular tint, but the roughness I can tell you a little bit about. So the roughness is essentially how rough a model is, like the surface of the object. If you put this to the left, it will be very shiny, so this is essentially not rough. And if you put this all the way to the right, it will be very rough, and yeah, your light will essentially reflect differently on it, right? So we want to put this at maybe 0.3, a little bit of a shine, but not too much. Then we have a lot of other options, which I am not going over right now. We're just gonna focus on the base color and our roughness. So here we have our first material. Essentially, you can create whatever you want. Do you want it a little bit more gray? Do you want it a little bit more black? I'm gonna choose this gray, and I can actually, let's rename this to metal gray or dark. And what we saw in our image is that we also have this lighter part here, right? How do we do this? Well, you can essentially create multiple materials per object. That is totally possible. So I'm going to do that. You just want to select the part that you want to give multiple materials, go into your material properties, click on plus, and here you can see that we have a material dark and now a empty one. I actually want to duplicate the metal dark. So I'm going to select the metal dark and click on this little 2 here. This will create a metal dark 001, which is a copy. And I'm gonna rename this to metal, let's do light. And this color is gonna be changed to a way brighter. We cannot see anything. Why is this? Well, we need to assign certain parts of our model to this material. So I am going into edit mode and I'm going to select whatever I want to have this color. So it's gonna be all of these faces here. Then you can go to the right material and click on assign. So here we have 2 materials. Very, very cool. This is super simple, and yeah, this is one of the things that you can do. One of the things that we also can do is we can paint our model. Okay, so how do we do this? Well, let's go to our wood here. I'm just going to back to layout or modeling, because if you want to paint something, you have to create some UVs. How do we create UVs? Well, if you go into edit mode and do edge selection, you can select, let's select this whole edge loop, the bottom also, and click on Ctrl E, mark seam. So this creates this red part here, right? This red edge loop. And what this essentially does, it cuts it away, right? It cuts it out. Why do we need to do this? If we go to UV editing, you will see why. Our textures will always be 2D, right? We do not really have 3D textures yet. We have 2D texture maps. And our model is 3D, so we have to find a way to make our model 2D so we can essentially project our texture on top of our 3D model. So if I click on A and click on U to unwrap our model, we can see that we have 2 very nice cut out parts here, which is the bottom and the top, right? Both of these. You can also see one very weird part here, which is not good, and that is literally everything between them. Why are they not like being projected good? This is because we do not have enough seams for it to be flattened. So I'm just gonna select from here all the way to the bottom, Ctrl E, and then mark seam. So now essentially we also take a knife and just cut all the way here, so we can essentially flap this out, right? Select everything, you unwrap, and here we can see that we have a very nice UV unwrap. So what can we do with this UV map? Let's first create a material. So go to shading, select your wood, click on new, and here we have a material assigned to it. We can rename this material to wood and add a image texture. So just click on the Shift A, search, and I always type just EM, and then image texture pops up, and we have here our image texture node. This color can just be thrown into the base color, and you can see that we don't really have any image data in here. We're gonna create one, click on new, and this is just gonna be renamed to wood, and I will keep our width and height at 1024. You can change the color if you want. I'm not gonna do that yet, but we can just click on OK right now. So if we now go to texture paint, you can see that we have our UVs here and we have our 3D model here. Both are set though to our texture paint or paint section. And what you can do here, you can paint with just clicking and dragging your mouse. This happens on the 2D, which is this you can do on 2D, but also here on 3D. And you can see that they update each other. So if I do hairline, it will go here. If I do hairline, you'll see that it ends up here, because they are essentially already in sync with each other. So we want to create a wood here, right? So you have a lot of options. You can see already here, we can click fill, clone, smear, soften, draw. We can click on fill, and down here in the color picker you can just select a kind of a wood color. So it's orangey dark red. You can just play around with that a little bit. You can also look at your image references here, so it's quite bright there. And fill this all up. Very, very cool. So this is our simple wooden texture. We want, of course, also this red part here, right? So how are we gonna do that? Well, we can click on our draw, and when you click on draw, you have some brushes. So you can change your brushes. At this moment, I only have like one here, but you can change the radius, the strength. You can set certain stroke spaces. There's like a lot of options you have here. The only thing that I would focus upon right now is the radius, strength, and very maybe the fall off, because the fall off essentially creates a smooth or not smooth brush stroke. So if you change these curves, let's say we want it just very sharp, we can select this one, right? If you want it very smooth, we have the smooth one. If you want it, you can just play around with these. I will do, let's just do smooth for right now, and we can always go back to sharp. And we want to create this red part in here, right? So if we get here our metal part back, we can see where we want to paint, right? So it will probably be around here, but then with a red color. So just put this to more of a red color, and we want this to be around here. Cool. The only problem is that with the 3D view, you can see that whatever we don't see doesn't get created on the other side. So this is sometimes why it is very handy to also just paint on your UV maps in here. And one thing that is also very handy when you create it here is that you look at the vertices that we have here. So these are all the geometry that we have, and if you want to keep a line straight, sometimes it's handy to stay next to one of those lines, right? So I'm just gonna do that for right now. If you want brown again, you can just color pick it, right? So you can also here change colors. So if you just do a color flip, it will flip to the other color. This one is still black, but you can just color pick this one, and now we have that. So as you can see, we have a lot of options here, and you can just paint a lot. It's quite addictive. Sometimes you just keep painting, and it's it can be really fun. Make sure you save the image. Here you can see these little stars on top. This only happens when your image is not saved. So you can just save your image, save as, and then put it inside somewhere. So the next time you start it up, you still have this image. Because if you just close it, it will not have this image saved, okay? Now, if you go back to shading, we can see that we have our wooden material and our X. This wood is not really this shiny, right? We can just put the roughness way up, so it is more of a wood kind of roughness. And yeah, that is how we create one of these models. So if you guys want more tutorials like this, please let me know. I really like to create them, and of course check out all my other stuff. And yeah, lots of thanks to my patrons. And if you want to support me, that's I guess the best way to support me, or go on my website and grab one of the amazing courses that I've been creating. So I see you guys in the next part, and yeah, have a good one.